You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong, all on Georgia Radio Network.
From the Dr. Cool headquarters in Dallas, Georgia, this is episode 85 of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. I'm Dave Roberts. She eats Cheez-Its in her car. She's writer, blogger, podcast star, TV personality, Jessica Szilagyi.
Hey.
How was your week?
Good. How was yours? Did you enjoy the rest of your vacation?
I did. Yeah, I always enjoy spending time with my boys, my nephews. Mm-hmm. And, of course, with the boat broken, there was plenty of quality time sitting by the pool, getting tanner. Because tan fat is more attractive than white fat.
Yes, if you can't tone it, tan it.
Absolutely. How goes the corruption down in your area?
Thriving and unrestricted.
My little brother's down with you tonight. He is. He works for a trucking company, and they recruit recent grads from his alma mater, which is Southern. Mm-hmm. And they're doing a job fair down there. And I talked to him yesterday. So I'm like, "Where are you going?" He goes, "Statesboro." I'm like, "Why?"
Yeah, on purpose.
Yeah. He goes, yeah. We've got to hire whatever. Like they hire like 20 kids, and then start seeing who shakes out, and it's sort of like Survivor, but with recent grads. I guess that would be The Apprentice.
Yeah, I don't envy him. I mean, it's hard to find good workers in any industry right now.
It is, and they, like when he started right out of school, they run those kids to death. Mm-hmm. Obviously hopefully not graduating from Southern and driving a truck, but they work long hours.
Right.
Speaking of Statesboro, it wants to move into the transit business. Speaking of, sort of.
So this story came about after a council meeting back in September, I guess at this point. And it was one of those things where, like, I hadn't been to the council meetings in quite a while. Their meetings are on the same days as some of the other entities that I cover. And they started talking about this, and I was like, surely they're not talking about a city-owned transit program in any capacity. Because if you look around, I mean, most places are trying to get out of that. And I knew that they had done a transportation study, which cost a boatload of money, and it had 4 recommendations, and they decided that they're going to move forward with the most expensive one, which is hilarious and so very government. It's the most government thing to do ever, is to pick the most expensive one. But it's going to cost the city $658,000 a year, and they're going to pull in $79,000 a year in fare revenue. And they're being smart about it in the sense that they're going to be applying for grants. And if they don't get a startup grant to actually help them with the infrastructure, like a bus station and some of the, I guess, mapping things that you would consider, if they don't get that grant, they're not going to go any further because the initial investment would be too much. I mean, we're not talking about, it's a big city, but it's not a massive city. But even with the grants going forward, it's going to cost them over almost $300,000 every year, and they'll only bring in $78,000. So they're picking something that even with state and federal funds, they're only going to make, I mean, they're going to be in the hole $210,000 every year at least.
And, I live, up here near Kennesaw, and KSU, which is a smaller university, has the Owl Bus. And they'll pick kids up from take them to the mall. Obviously, they have to have their own schedule that's owned by the university. I assume there's an Eagle Bus or something like that down there for the students.
There is. We have a Georgia Southern bus, which it's pretty, from my understanding, I mean, they go until 11 or 12 o'clock at night, depending on the day. And then we also have a regional bus that goes from a lot of the rural counties through the Coastal Regional Commission that takes people to doctor's appointments and things like that. You have to schedule it, and you have to be within there. It's very narrow, but they'll, it's not something you take to work, but if you don't have transportation, they'll get you around. And then we also have, for the students, we have, well, not even just for the students, but in the evenings, for the different bars and restaurants, we have private entities now that are running like a $3 round trip type thing where you can get dropped off at your bar of choice and hop around and get taken home at night or back to certain complexes and things like that. So, which is obviously aimed at reducing DUIs, but the point is that people are still having transportation options, and we have Uber. And then, we always have the trusty phone a friend. I don't understand why a city the size of Statesboro wants to take on such a massive venture. And you're like, the projections of revenue is based on what they think they'll get in fares. And the reason that it is what it is because they're planning on subsidizing and offering reduced rates to some riders and things like that. So you're not even charging the same fee for everyone. And like, you're assuming that not everyone's going to ask for subsidized rates, which, why is a city subsidizing bus fare when we're not even that big?
Well, you've got Uber, you got Lyft, you've got a large segment of the population down there, which is students, are covered. The projections are showing, obviously what they think they're going to get in fares, which is going to be rosy. Also, on the other side, those projections on what it costs to operate that bus, there's maintenance costs, there's employee costs, there's everything from cleaning the gum from under the seats to changing tires to bus driver calls in sick today. Inflation.
Gas prices going up. I mean, you're not even considering like what happens if we have another era after like Katrina.
Right.
And you're charging these dirt low rates, and your costs double.
And what are the hours? 6 to 6.
Yes, that's what's even worse. 6 a.m. Okay, I mean, Statesboro, first of all, the route is 60 minutes. Like, you can take the entire route in 60 minutes if you go to the farthest place. We're 14 square miles, basically. And I'm trying to figure out, like, who's going to be using the 6 a.m. time frame when you don't have to go that. I mean, it's dumb. I'm dumbfounded by it. And what's even more alarming are what the other options were. Because, like I said, this one is a plan, like, every day at 12:05, it's at this stop, at 1:05 at this stop, blah, 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 blah. The other options were, basically, like, you call and say, come get me now. Another option was having, like, basically just keep the buses moving and it gets there when it gets there. And then another aspect is they want to have a backup bus so that if something happens. But the problem with a backup bus is that you're going to buy a brand new bus to sit there until something happens to the other bus. Like, that's not a good use of funds either.
And assume it cranks up.
Well, that's right.
Adding to the maintenance cost, because you're going to have somebody to work on those buses. And I mean, the base fare would be $2. $2. I mean, 14.
That's cheaper than MARTA.
14 square miles. You can about take Uber, especially if you do the rideshare Uber, I don't know, the one that I don't use, that you can pile, 3 different people that are going to generally the same area together and share the fare, and take care of that. You still have to get yourself to the bus stop, still have to make the bus. And there's one every hour. You're talking about 12. And that's not, at least if you take MARTA to work, they don't stop running at 6 o'clock if your boss says you need to work late. Now you're stranded.
Well, and like I said, the initial investment is $811,000. And so if they don't get the initial grant, they can't afford that. They have some grant money set aside and some T-SPLOST funds, but they can't commit to all of that on their own. So if they don't get it, it's off the table completely. But then, like I said, the annual costs are projected to be at $658,000. And if you're saying that the state and feds are going to cover 50% of that, I mean, you're right, but everyone knows that federal funding like that does not go on forever, especially something like this. So eventually, the entire $658 is going to be shifted to you. As the local taxpayers.
And the taxpayers. Besides the fact that state funds are coming out of my pocket.
That's right.
And the federal funds, for that matter. So people in Topeka, Kansas are having a piece of their taxes sent to Statesboro to buy a bus that nobody needs and nobody wants.
Well, the entire premise of these types of things are that they're either supposed to pay for themselves or make money. Like when you have water services from the city, it's not sustainable to subsidize the rates. You charge what it costs you to give them the water.
Right. Well, if running a bus service was profitable, someone would be doing it. Oh, yeah, they are. Uber's doing it. If it was profitable, somebody would be doing it now. In order to buy, I can't believe they're talking about spending $800,000. And these aren't like MARTA buses. These are more like the bus you take transferring from park and ride to the airport.
Yeah, it's the little shuttle buses that have, 20 seats?
Something like that. Yeah, I mean, so a maximum fare is $40 on an hour ride. That doesn't cover the cost of the bus. It doesn't cover anything. I mean, the numbers say it doesn't cover what you need. I mean, hell, it's a huge. Even if the bus was full all the time, it wouldn't cover it.
Right.
So speaking of tax money, Americans spent more on taxes in 2018 than on food, clothing, and healthcare combined.
And this isn't a new headline. I mean, they tell us this every year, just about, as far back as I can remember. But when you say it out loud, I still think it's astounding. Like, yes, we all know it, and every time we pay our taxes and we get dinged for a fine here and we shell out our property taxes and all that, I mean, we all know it, but to see the numbers, I think it's always staggering.
It is. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Expenditure Survey, average, what do they call it? Consumer unit, defined as families, single persons living alone or sharing a household with others, but who are financially independent, 2 or more persons living together who share major expenses.
Which I think is a good definition. I mean, it's basically everybody. They're just combining households so that they're not counting someone twice.
Right. $9,000 and change on federal income taxes on average. $5,000 and change on Social Security taxes. Almost $2,300 on state and local income taxes. $2,200 on property taxes. And almost $80 on what they call other taxes. Giving us a grand total of 2018 of $18,617.93.
I mean, and that's average. I love when it's the average. People are like, well, some people don't pay any taxes. Yes, no kidding. That's why when you add zeros across the board, it drags down the average. Yeah. So that's why you can say that you pay more or you pay, I mean, people just, I pay more than that. Okay.
Well, obviously, they never had to worry about a GPA. Yeah, the low numbers hurts your GPA. Yeah, and the people who pay, twice that. Yeah, of course, it's an average. But it seems, I mean, it's disproportionate to the median income of what you're paying.
Absolutely. And people, the first argument that I saw on different social media sites was, well, income's gone up. Well, that's great, but the point is that Americans are spending more on taxes than what they're spending on food, clothing, and healthcare combined. So just because, I mean, that's great that income's going up, but when all of your other costs are too, you're still like that. It makes no difference if I make $5,000 a year or a month and pay out, $2,000 in taxes and $1,500 in what they're talking about, and then you double my income and you double everything else. Like how are we okay with that? And why are so many people like, well, I'm making more, of course I'm going to pay more taxes. You do realize that the entire premise is wrong. Like, you're being punished for doing better. Why are you not more outraged?
Not just that. Is you're running on a treadmill. If your income goes up $5,000 more and you end up owing $5,000 more in taxes, you didn't get anywhere.
That's right. There's plenty of people who have declined a promotion or a pay raise because it will put them in the next tax bracket, but not to the point where it's beneficial.
Now look, according to census, the median household income in the United States is almost $62,000. That's not average; it's median, so it's a little different calculation. But this is almost a third. It's about 30% of it. 30% of what every household makes is going straight to government in one form or another. And that is...
And what, it's been only 1 year where was there a small dip?
2016, 15. There was a dip across the board. 17, whatever it was. There was a dip across the board. Coming out of 16 into 17, where incomes went down. So some of the numbers lag on this, but when you look at the economic numbers over the last 6 years, which is what this story covers, you see a big dip across the board on government income, personal incomes, and then we start seeing it come back up after the 16 election, and 16 and 17 it starts to recover. So what I kind of did some guerrilla math on this. The average increase when you take those 6 years, including the dip, and you take it, it's about 6.6% year-to-year increase on average. Some years are 12%, one year was negative. It came up to about 6.6% when I did the math. Again, I'm not a statistician. Average wage growth, according to the federal government, is about 3.2% a year is what they're looking for. Talk about disproportionate. Your average wages are going up 3.2%, and your taxes are going up 6.6%.
$18,000 on average.
Average. I mean,
and there's plenty of people. Yeah, there's plenty of people who have different factor. I mean, there's so many different. And then you're not even talking about the people who get a dang refund and they didn't even pay anything.
Yeah, welfare.
Right, the earned income tax credit. Love that.
Right. Boy. Yeah, and that shows negative on their end. That's when I say average, I'm talking about the average American family. Everyone tells us the average American family is struggling. At least when you watch the Democratic debates and stuff. Well, they'd be struggling a lot less if you weren't taking $20,000 out of their pocket every year. I mean, that's enough to put kids in private school. That's enough to take care of yourself, take care of your family, improve your living condition. Hell, that's a reasonably priced new car every year. The government in all of its forms is taken directly from our pockets. Or as I call it, a trip to Vegas.
Well,
that was a joke, Jessica.
ha.
Yeah, Jessica's not very good humor tonight. The ragweed is trying to kill her.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time, but I mean, I hate statistics like this, but at the same time, I love when they come out because I like being able to see trends, and I like when numbers are broken down in specifics like this, but I just don't understand why more people aren't bothered by it. I mean, I don't know. I just don't.
You ever notice that tax day and election day are on the opposite ends of the calendar?
Mm-hmm.
And I guarantee you, people had to do what I do every year and go to your accountant and grab a checkbook and write a check.
That's right.
There'd be a lot of changes. When you talk to folks like, you got a raise, huh? Yeah, I got another $1 an hour. Great. Well, after taxes, it'll be about this. It'll be about 50 cents. That's great. Like, no. The government got a pay raise. Yeah, and keep in mind, we're told the labor participation rate is much higher. Unemployment rate has gone from 10 down to 3. We've got more people working. Theoretically, less people need handouts, which should mean there should be less per capita tax burden on the taxpayer. You would think.
But alas, we're here.
But here we are. Now, the story doesn't really break down where the increase is. It's kind of overall. Is it a result of property tax increases with property prices going up? Is it the state income taxes going up? Is it losing deductions for certain state and local income taxes, which is what the California and New York are really upset about? So is it a combination of those factors? I don't think it is, because we're seeing this going back to 2013, which is in the middle of the Great Recession. We don't start pulling out of that until 16. Property prices in 2013 are still in the toilet.
Right.
Then if you live in Paulding County, the school board raises your value in your house and the millage rate because, it's for the children.
Ugh, the freaking children. They don't pay taxes. They're dead weight.
They are. They cost a ton of money to educate. And they don't get all that educated.
Oh, it's time for an education podcast, I suppose.
Sooner or later. The 10 least tax-friendly states. Number 1 is Illinois.
Did this list surprise you?
It does a little bit. I'm not surprised it's ranked. But number 1?
I was just surprised that California is not in the top 10.
Right. And that I don't know how they break that down. And they're considered tax friendly, and that could mean because they give a bunch of exemptions. 2 is Connecticut, 3 is New York, and no one's surprised about New York. Wisconsin, New Jersey, Nebraska, Pennsylvania, Ohio, the armpit of America, Iowa, and Kansas rounding out the top 10. And you would think Midwest like Iowa and Kansas would be a little more tax friendly.
But
I guess they're not. The most tax friendly states are Wyoming, Nevada, Tennessee, Florida. I mean, we know that. Alaska, Washington, South Dakota, North Dakota, Arizona, and New Hampshire. That's surprising, too. That New Hampshire would round out the top 10.
I don't know. What does it mean to be tax friendly, though, really? I mean, are any taxes friendly? Of course, with Florida and Tennessee with no state income. I mean, I get that, but, what is it? What does it really mean? No tax is friendly. It's just least worst.
It is least worst. Well, rewrite the article.
Don't tell me what to do.
Georgia is considered, according to this article, to be mixed.
Shocking. That's how we are. We never lead the pack and we never drag up the rear. We're just hovering at mediocrity.
Well, and I'm guessing mixed is going to come in because we don't have city and county income taxes like you find in New York and Chicago and places like that. But we do have a fairly oppressive income-based tax across the state, and our property taxes are not all that friendly. Gas tax, not friendly. But City of Atlanta doesn't give you a income tax. I thought I would live down there again.
Should we thank them?
Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you, Keisha. Thank you. Probably because they can't. They haven't figured out how to do that yet. Social Security income is not taxed in most states, but 13 states do tax it. Colorado, Connecticut, Kansas, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, New Mexico, North Dakota, Rhode Island, Utah, Vermont, and West Virginia. And they tax it, and they do. They don't tax it all the same, but they all tax Social Security income. So, interesting. Which is basically being taxed on what you've already been taxed on. And getting some of your tax back. And they're going to tax that.
Everyone sucks.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Speaking of sucking.
Wow, that's a hell of a transition. A guilty verdict for Amber Geiger.
I was like, wait, what?
I don't know. I was just trying to do the same thing I did for Julian Assange.
No, you can't top that.
So, Amber Geiger is the former police officer in Dallas, Texas, who got off on the wrong floor in an apartment building, walked into a man's apartment, saw somebody get off the couch, shot and killed him. She was found guilty last week and sentenced last week to 10 years.
I feel like before she was even sentenced, we knew that whatever sentence she got was not going to be the right one for the world of social media warriors. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah. They could have sentenced her to 99 years, which was the max.
And they'd be like, this is an abomination.
Right. And look,
total miscarriage of justice.
They got off into the weeds in this thing. Apparently she was sexting with somebody as she's walking down the hallway, and I don't know why that was relevant. Texting would have been ample.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I totally agree that, I mean, I'm glad that they considered her employment or her former employment. I'm glad they considered it because I wouldn't want her to be treated differently because, or I wouldn't want her to have special treatment because she was a police officer. But at the same time, I feel like there was, because she was a police officer on the other end of the spectrum, there was a call for more justice in a different capacity because it made for good headlines.
Oh, I agree. And this happened right in the middle of other police-involved shootings. She's white. The person she shot happened to be black. Happened to be an immigrant. And wrongest of all, he was in his own home.
Right.
And one of the things that I heard watching the coverage of this, and to play devil's advocate on the police officer having a higher standard, is we don't walk around with a radio on our shoulder that when we find our door unlocked, we can go, hey, listen, I need backup. She obviously had that advantage. Obviously had the advantage of a firearm, most likely a flashlight on her, and the ability to command Dallas PD, put your hands up. Which apparently she did none of that and let him up. I agree she's guilty of something. I think murder.
Absolutely.
I think murder, and we talked about it. I think something we covered last week. Like it's the charge, I think, is a little overdone. And the prosecutors were looking for 28 years.
Do you know why?
Because it was Jean's 28th birthday.
Yes, which I think is a terrible reason to sentence anyone for any period of time. I don't care what you did. Like, don't tug at heartstrings for sentencing. The sentence is supposed to fit the crime.
Absolutely. And look, you're right. That's stupid.
Not the charge that you're convicted of, the actual crime.
And should be consistent with similar crimes across the board, at least across that municipality. So if somebody else commit, again, I have a hard time saying murder, but mistaken identity. And look, I don't know if I've said that. I think I've told you and Matt before. I don't know if I've said this on the show. I dated a girl who lived in a mid-rise in Sandy Springs. And we didn't live together, but I didn't knock. I had my key to let myself in the gate, and I'd just walk into the apartment.
Sinner.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were playing Parcheesi. So I get off on the wrong floor, and I just walk to the appropriate number, walk in, hear the shower running, which, is not really all that odd. I look around and I'm like, where the hell did she get all this furniture? Then I look to my right on the door jamb, and there's a Torah.
You must have been mortified.
No one saw me. Oh yeah, I was mortified. But I look to the right and I'm like, I see a Torah, and I know she's not Jewish. I'm like, and I slowly back away. And walk back out to the parking garage and look and see I'm at one floor too low, and went back and drove up there. We actually had a friend of mine who was back from Iraq visiting us, and he went to a bar and tried to come back to the apartment and ended up sleeping in the hallway because he couldn't find the right floor because he'd been in a bar. So this kind of stuff happens. It's understandable to me, and I think that the whole sexting thing was incendiary. I mean, it was
trying to make her look as bad as possible. Oh my God, she was sexting someone. Can you believe it?
Yeah, I mean,
she's a horrible person.
Makes her cooler. But look, it doesn't matter if she was sending a picture of her boobies or saying, "Hey, you want to grab dinner tonight?" She was again, they said carrying a firearm while being distracted. I mean, who doesn't? Who has a firearm from time to time get distracted, especially when you think you're walking down your own hallway.
That's right. When you're in your own building like that. I mean, anyone, like, I lived in Atlanta for a long time, and I never got off on the wrong floor or anything like that. And ironic, it's amazing that I didn't, because I actually lived in the same apartment complex for 5 years and moved in that apartment complex 4 times. So it's incredible that I didn't end up in the wrong place at some point. But when you get in your building, there is a sense of, like, you do relax and you do let your guard down in the sense that you are less cautious of your surroundings because it's home.
Yeah, well, and you're also not going to, LZ X-ray. You're walking in an apartment complex. Everybody who's, I don't know anybody who doesn't shoot a text like, okay, I made it home or whatever, talk to you tomorrow, or whatever, walking in your own apartment complex. I mean, it's just the idea that she's supposed to be on, high alert with her head on a swivel, 24 hours a day, or at least any time that she has a gun on her, I think was ridiculous. It was, again, used to kind of fan the flames. That this prosecutor overcharged, man. And I think her attorney really messed up when he put her on the stand.
Yeah, because she lost it.
She did, and she admitted to wanting to kill the person that was in her apartment. And I didn't see the testimony itself, but that's not the reason you shoot somebody. It's to stop the threat. Mm-hmm. And either she was poorly prepared, or she should have taken the stand, or she could have taken the stand during sentencing, and said, I apologize for what happened, and the attorney could have put together the narrative. There's no reason for her to take the stand at all.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't have a problem with the 10 years. I think, like you said, she's absolutely guilty of something. And I think what?
I'd say, 10 out in 5 or out in 7, manslaughter 1, reckless depraved indifference, something. I mean, it's still a felony. Murder, that has a special name in our society.
That's right, and like I understand that people are outraged by this story, and I understand that it hurts them and that people lost a loved one. I would never discredit or discount any of that. It's all very relevant. But first of all, I am a believer of, first of all, I understand the definition of murder. And I think that she was charged improperly, and I think that the jury convicted on the wrong charge. I'm not sure that manslaughter was the right one either, and I like that there was discretion in sentencing, but I mean, the whole thing I think was just handled poorly. But at the same time, if you're not like a seasoned gangster or a serial killer or something where you have a violent background, I'm a huge believer in knowing that there are a lot of people who have killed someone in their life and they battle that demon no matter what the circumstances were, whether it was self-defense or whether it was something like this or a car accident. I mean, she has to live with that. And if you saw her testimony, I don't think that was dramatic simply because she was on trial. I really do believe she is remorseful. And I think that that's shown by the brother being so gracious and asking that, or praying that she has a life that follows Christ and hugging her in the courtroom. There are people who have much more accidental type deaths and the family doesn't forgive them that graciously.
Oh, absolutely. Look, she shot him twice, shot twice, hit him once, fatally in the torso, which, 50%, not great. She saw somebody in an apartment. I would have probably liked to see 5 years manslaughter. You're a felon for the rest of your life. You'll never be a police officer again. You'll never own a gun again. Even though I'm not, in favor of the gun bans for convicted felons once you're off parole, but does this serve?
It could have been specific to this crime. The judge could have made that specific because of what happened, not because you support guns being taken. And
that's true. And look, does this serve the community to lock this woman away? Is there anybody out there right now who is not going to make that mistake because of this, as an example? Is society somehow served by locking her away as if she's dangerous, as if this is what she likes to do, which is bust doors open, unlock doors, and shoot residents? I don't think so. This is one of those things where people are saying I'm weak on justice and all that stuff, but I don't think society's served by putting her in prison and paying to imprison her and spending the next 5, 7 to 10 years teaching her how to be a better criminal.
Right. And then teaching her how to reintegrate and hoping for the best when she gets out.
Right. She's lost her livelihood. For the rest of her life, people will be able to Google her name. And I'm not downplaying the death. I'm just saying this was not a malicious act. She effed up. And it's if I walked into what I thought was my house and I saw somebody coming towards me in the dark, I mean, I can't say I wouldn't. But she's sentenced to a dime, and she is not going. I have no idea. I wouldn't imagine the prison's going to be very friendly to her after all this, especially being a police officer, especially being in a shooting of a innocent minority person. I don't. Hopefully they have her in some sort of protective custody.
Yeah, like I said, I think the book was thrown at her because they enjoyed making an example out of her. I think it was relevant that she was a police officer. She had certain training. She's supposed to be more polished in some things, but doesn't take away the element of humanity and the elements of racism and the undertones of premeditation, and yet somehow just being distracted by sex scene. Like, you can't have both. You can't have premeditation and also be distracted.
Well, that's the thing, is there can't be any premeditation. You just can't. That would be. I mean, she'd be the worst killer in the world to purposely get off on the wrong floor, believing that some black guy's door is going to be unlocked, walking there and shooting him. I mean, that's the. I sure as hell couldn't sell a book with that plot.
Right.
I think she had been involved in another shooting, if I recall correctly. I'm not reading that story, but she had been involved in another shooting where, and that may have been brought up. It certainly was brought up in the news at the time when this happened to kind of sully her reputation. And of course, BLM, Black Lives Matter, got involved and started shouting "No justice, no peace," and they're not surprised with a light sentence and all that stuff. They're just being them.
It sucks.
BLM. They're just being activists.
Yes, and I just really hate where we have gone in terms of what justice is. Justice is not getting what you want. Justice is holding someone accountable for their actions and punishing them appropriately. Right. Not ruining lives, not making sure that someone's locked up forever just because, and making sure that she's gone for as many years that she took off from him. I mean, that's not what it is, and that's not what it ever has been. And I don't ever want it to be that.
Right. But I fear that's where we're heading. Is we're going to start kowtowing to activists. Yes. Oh yeah, yeah. So, staying on the law enforcement, officer suspended for cooperating with ICE, Immigration's Customs Enforcement.
Is that a headline you ever thought you'd read?
No. In fact, I thought you missed a word. I thought you missed not. Officer suspended for not cooperating with ICE. Like, that would be, that would, of course, that wouldn't make the news. This happened in Fairfax County, Virginia, which I actually have an ex-wife and an ex-girlfriend living there.
Wow. Have you called ICE on them?
I haven't. No, the ex-wife and I are just fine. Actually, it's the same girlfriend that I had I got off the wrong floor. I ran her all the way up to Virginia. Let's make this all about me. So this happened in Fairfax, Virginia. An officer cooperated with federal deportation officers by turning over an illegal immigrant he encountered during a traffic stop. The officer was working a traffic accident, came across someone without a driver's license. When the officer ran his name, it returned a flag from ICE which said the migrant was a fugitive after failing to appear for deportation hearing. The county's own system confirmed the ICE warrant, and the officer then called an ICE employee, responded.
Ugh, this is where it goes south.
The chief says that violates department policy.
So before you go any further, my first question is, why does the county have a system to confirm ICE warrants if they have a policy that prohibits them from cooperating with ICE?
Obey, peasant.
I mean, that can't be cheap to have integration. I mean, I don't know how big is Fairfax County?
It's pretty big. I mean, it's not It's pretty close to DC.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. I'm not, but it still can't be cheap to have a system and to integrate and to have intergovernmental agreements with federal agencies like ICE. You have to have a written agreement for that. So why do you have a system that cross-checks if the policy is to do nothing after you cross-check? Why waste anybody's time?
Yeah, and look, ICE is right down the road. And this is where Alexandria is. I mean, Fairfax wraps half of DC. Like if you work in DC and you don't want to pay DC taxes or live in DC or actually be able to own a gun, you live in Fairfax County in Alexandria or someplace like that. I mean, this is a area where you commute. So it's quite possible this officer knew a lot of these federal agents. It's not, if there's, I can't believe that a county that close to the seat of our federal government would have a policy like that.
When the chief said, our county is one of the most diverse counties in the nation, and no one should have the perception that the Fairfax County Police Department is acting as a civil immigration agent for ICE. And then he said that the officer who did this deprived a person of their freedom by cooperating with ICE. I mean, obviously the most important question here is, since when does the department policy override federal law?
Okay. Sorry, Eric. He had a f***ing warrant. A warrant. This is not a deputy or a police officer. I'm not sure if it's a sheriff or it's chiefs, police officer, walking up to somebody who speaks Spanish going, hey, let me see your papers.
Right. He
was run and he had a warrant.
And my understanding is that he was, like, the traffic stop. I mean, the language I think is poor, but if you read multiple sources, like, it appears that this person who was here illegally was a part of the traffic accident. And so that's why he was asked to show his license. And when he did, they run them all, whether you're the at fault party or not. And it came back with a flag. I mean, if you have a flag from Atlanta, they don't say, oh, sorry, we don't cooperate with Atlanta. They would never do that.
Right. In fact, I know somebody, I got a friend who had a traffic ticket. It was like 15 years before, had moved out of state, got a driver's license, moved back into the state, got another driver's license. And because of computer error, came back that he that he never paid a traffic ticket. So they arrested him, which was great because he was like live tweeting in the back of the police car. Mm-hmm. And he called a lawyer friend and they're like, look, you get to pay me or just pay them. But the fact is that they hauled him in. I mean, they were nice about it, but they took him in. They said, there must be a bench warrant because you've got an unpaid ticket from 2005. He's like, I've gotten 3 license renewals since then.
Well, and I mean, I am venturing into the speculation world here a little bit, but if you have a system that cross-checks ICE holds and warrants, I'm assuming, like I said, I'm speculating here, but that your agency has some sort of 287G collaborative partnership stuff on this from the standpoint of enforcing the laws. Like, your department policy may not reflect that, but at some level you are implementing immigration things, and it may be so that they can get federal funding. I mean, it could be a number of things.
You know damn well Virginia has an agreement with the federal government.
Right. And so I just, I would want to know, as this goes on, is there going to be, if there is some sort of intergovernmental agreement in place, is the police department as a whole, the administration, the county government, whoever, going to be held accountable for ignoring that and making a policy that conflicts with something that they've received federal money over?
Now, look, this guy was going to jail anyway. No tiene licencia. He had no driver's license, involved in an accident. I mean, it's not like he was going free. is that the chief didn't like him calling ICE. I mean, again, this is really poorly written. It doesn't say directly if he was the driver or not. He came across someone without a driver's license. He got the name, ran it, and got a flag from ICE.
Right.
So, I mean, look, open up any metro area blotter and look at how many say no license. He was going to jail. So it's not like he was deprived of, assuming he was the driver. Again, this Washington Times story is not awesome. All in Georgia does a much, much better job.
I agree.
So if he was the driver, he was going to jail anyway. And so he was not deprived of his freedom by going to ICE, and he had a warrant. This is not not the officer going, "Hey boy, where are your papers?" No.
And let's not forget what it means to have an ICE hold. Like, most people who are here illegally don't have one. So he had to have some sort of prior interaction to be in that position.
Right.
I think that's relevant.
Absolutely, it's relevant. And I hope this guy wins a nice, fat, wrongful termination lawsuit and the chief's fired.
No, we can only be so lucky. But I don't know what the politics are in Virginia, but if they're anything like the governors, I mean, this guy will be lucky if he can just move on quietly without having his name released and his home address published on, Tumblr or something.
Yeah, that or POTUS will find out who he is. Bring him to the White House, hand him an ICE badge, and go, "Congratulations, you just became a federal agent." There
you go.
Which is something he would do.
Do it. Just for spite,
It is something he would do.
Yeah.
So, real quick, we have a joint closing thought. This story came across Facebook from my state rep, Joseph Gullett. And it was one of those things just driving people to his page. But there's a Senate committee formed to decide if Georgia should require all riders in a vehicle to wear seatbelts, those in the back seat also, and whether that is a great idea.
It's not.
Well, there we go. Case closed. Let's move on. Yeah, the seatbelt law.
Stop wasting our time. Why are they wasting time and money? Like, get out of here.
Oh, they can waste their time all they want. It's my money.
Leave us alone. Oh my God, I don't wear my seatbelt because it's illegal not to. I wear my seatbelt because my mom raised me to wear my seatbelt, not because it was illegal, but because she wanted me to. Like, it has none of this has anything to do with the law. People who don't wear their seatbelt don't because, like, they're not just trying to get pulled over. They don't like wearing their seatbelt. Shut up. Like, this is stupid. This is the dumbest study committee we have. Seatbelt laws? Really?
And the one of the laws that does cause me to wear my seatbelt is when they told the automakers they have to make the ding, the no seatbelt. Like, if I'm driving from one end of a shopping center to the other, I'll go ahead and put my seatbelt on just because this thing is so damn annoying. I can't talk on the phone, and it never shuts up. Like, used to be able to do it 3 times and just go away.
Sure, but that's the market.
It's not the market. That's the federal government stepped in on that one.
Yeah, well, we don't have to listen to them.
Well, the automakers do if they want us to keep making autos.
Yeah, true. But, I mean, you know what's going to happen. You know that they're going to set, like, an increased standard, an increased baseline for actual front seat and driver tickets because it's only, $50 right now?
Right.
So they'll increase that, and then they'll try to have everyone buckled up, and, I'm sure it'll be a tiered system where, if you get pulled over 3 times for a seatbelt violation, you'll be picking up trash 72 weekends for...
Okay. Well, let me put my tinfoil hat on here. If I get pulled over in a car, and I'm not the driver, I'm not obligated to hand over my license. What's your name? None of your business. You
Is that... Are you sure? I thought if you are asked to identify yourself, you have to identify yourself.
I don't know. I know that you don't. I know you don't have to have a driver's license. So how?
I mean, I agree with you that in reality, like, unless something is going on where they think there's some sort of like drug running on. I mean, in a traditional, if you're in Connie or out on a date and you get pulled over because you're doing something stupid again, she's not going to have to show her license. I'm with you there.
Right. So if I've got somebody in the back seat that's unbuckled, man, that's, first of all, it's a personal safety thing, which is personal. It's the same thing with helmet laws on a motorcycle. If you don't wear a helmet on your motorcycle, it doesn't make you smart, but
But it also doesn't make you our problem.
Right.
Although I've had somebody tell me that it is the people's problem, because if you're not wearing a seatbelt, you can become a weapon, because you could get ejected and you could hurt somebody. I've
heard a similar argument that you can no longer control the vehicle because it doesn't hold you into the seat, therefore it makes the accident more dangerous. I've also heard the argument that it's not that it kills you, it's the cost that goes on to everybody when you go to the hospital and have to get treated.
I mean, I agree with that to an extent, but I mean, there's kind of like an underlying issue there.
Right. Well, yeah, but we take that reasoning. We have to go to fatty foods, to everything else. So that it's flawed reasoning, but I've heard that reasoning that's why we have helmet laws. Is not because it kills you, it's because you could be a vegetable and everybody's got to pay for your health care until your heart naturally stops. All right, Jessica, now we've beaten that one. Do you have your closing thought?
No, that was it. Leave us alone. Stop it. Give the money back. Hey, why don't you donate your study committee salary to, I don't know, a radio ad on the free market about why it's so great to wear your seatbelt instead of making a new law about it.
Yeah.
And study committees as a whole, like, tell me what you're studying, because I know that various states around the country, the Governor's Office of Highway Safety, those organizations, the moms in traffic groups, all these entities and 501c3s and advocacy groups, they already studied all of this. Just compile the information and then decide to leave us alone and do it on your free time and stop it.
Or just say it's not the role of government.
Yeah, stop it.
Well, I have the diagnosis for what's wrong with society.
They won't stop it?
Narcissism. I was at Home Depot today after having to move around one woman who was standing in the middle of the aisle while someone was cutting a key for her. And then a woman who was on one of the fat people carts with a leg hanging off and taking up the entire aisle that I had to go move around. I stood behind somebody writing a check for a $5 water filter. Writing a check. And then spent another 5 minutes telling the cashier why he didn't believe in plastic as I'm standing behind him in a work shirt, wanting to buy work stuff and get back to work. And I'm just like city enough to want to smack him in the back of the head and just country enough to just stand there and smile and nod.
People just... I'm with you on that. I mean... I didn't do my shopping on Amazon last Christmas because for any other reason. I mean, I love to support local stores, but it kills me. It kills me to be around them.
Just make it
commoners.
Make it legal to slap somebody. I'm not talking about like close fists and beat them down, but just when someone's doing something like that, it only takes a couple times getting smacked that you're like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't stand in the middle of the aisle while doing nothing while other people are trying to walk around me politely. So, these have been our opinions, and not necessarily those of All in Georgia, even though I'm right.
And make sure you follow us.
Follow us on social media. Make sure that you rate us on whichever podcast platform you use to listen to us. And 5 stars, if 4 is the maximum, we'll take a 4. And please share us. So, for Jessica Salaji, I'm Dave Roberts. Have a great week.